Welcome to our 7th mission. Today, the children of Israel are in a difficult situation. We're going to get to that, but Joseph and his brothers had died, and the Pharaoh who had let them in Egypt had passed, and another Pharaoh rose up who did not remember what happened and the relationship between Joseph and that Pharaoh. Now, we're going to see what happens with them, but first, we're following a man called Moses. And of course, we will be in the land of Egypt. As far as what happens, we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's not delay. Let's get straight into it. Let's start by seeing the situation. So let's turn to Exodus 1, verse 8. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. Verse 11. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. So this Pharaoh decided he wants to put these Hebrews to work and enslave them. But there's more. He feared them. And he put out a decree to go out and look for all the baby boys and kill them. Now there was one baby boy who survived, whose mother hid him in the reeds in a river. He was adopted by an Egyptian woman, the Pharaoh's daughter. He was raised in Egypt, but then he left. He did not want to have any part of it. We're going to check in with him. This man, of course, is Moses. So let's see what God has planned for him. Now this is an interesting sight and definitely something to pique Moses' interest. Let's find out what's happening. In chapter 3, Exodus 3:2, and the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And verse 10, Come now therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. So God has a plan. He's chosen Moses to go back to Egypt and bring out the children of Israel. So let's turn to chapter 7. And God has a plan in place to save them and bring them out of their situation, of their threatening situation. So in chapter 7, verse 17, Thus saith the Lord, In this thou shalt know that I am the Lord. Behold, I will smite with the rod that is in mine hand upon the waters which are in the river, and they shall be turned to blood. And the fish that is in the river shall die, and the river shall stink, and the Egyptians shall loathe to drink of the water of the river. Well, what do you think is a consequence of rivers turned to blood? Well, the Egyptians run out of water, and they need to go find water elsewhere and start digging some wells to find drinkable water. But there's more. After this, in chapter 8, verse 5, And the Lord spake unto Moses, Say unto Aaron, Aaron was Moses' brother, Stretch forth thine hand with thy rod over the streams, over the rivers, and over the ponds, and cause frauds to come up upon the land of Egypt. Frauds aren't too bad, but what's a problem when there's a lot of them, and they're coming into your houses, into your beds, into your food? They make a lot of noise. Imagine a croaking chorus of deafening noise. But God had more. In verse 16, And the Lord said unto Moses, Say unto Aaron, Stretch out thy rod, and smite the dust of the land, that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And in addition to this, verse 21, Else, if thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies upon thee, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thy houses, and the houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground whereon they are. So first lice, and then flies covering their houses. I think we know how that can be a disturbing sight and consequence on them. But there's more. Chapter 9. Verse 6. And the Lord did that thing on the morrow, and all the cattle of Egypt died. But of the cattle of the children of Israel died not one. Here's an important distinction. The Egyptians lost their cattle, but the children of Israel still had theirs. God was punishing Egypt, but Israel he protected. And now verse 9. And it shall become small dust in all the land of Egypt, and shall be a boil breaking forth with blains upon man and upon beast throughout all the land of Egypt. Have you ever been sick, or had a rash, especially something on your skin that was itchy or just gross? Yeah, that would not have been pleasant either. And let's go down to verse 23. And Moses stretched forth his rod toward heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and the fire ran along upon the ground, and the Lord rained hail upon the land of Egypt. Not just hail, but fire as well, upon the land of Egypt. Now he is actually raining down ice and fire on them. In chapter 10, verse 12. And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, that they may come up upon the land of Egypt, and eat every herb of the land, even all that the hail hath left. So whatever the hail did not destroy for plants, the locust came and gobbled it up. And come down to verse 21. And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. They saw not one another, neither rose any from his place for 3 days, but all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. A darkness that could be felt, perhaps enough to even hinder their candlelight from doing anything. Now, it doesn't seem as painful as the other plagues, but what's one problem with 3 days of darkness, pitch black? You could perhaps navigate your own home, but could you get to the store? Could you get to your place of work and back to your home again? That caused some trouble, and for 3 days the Egyptians could not go anywhere. And finally, Exodus chapter 11, verse 5. And all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sitteth upon his throne, even unto the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and all the firstborn of beasts. So just as Pharaoh had taken the children of Israel, the sons, babies, so God was taking his vengeance on the children of the Egyptians. Sometimes God knows and has better power and right to take vengeance, more so than us. And after all of this, all of these plagues, let's come to chapter 12, verse 33. And the Egyptians were urgent upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste, for they said, We be all dead men. So finally, the Egyptians release the Hebrews and let them go. But that's not all. As the Hebrews left, as Moses led them away, Pharaoh in chapter 14, verse 5, And it was told the king of Egypt that the people fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and of his servants was turned against the people, and they said, Why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us? And he made ready his chariot and took his people with him. He changed his mind. He wants them as his slaves, or dead. So he chased them down with his chariots and pinned them between the water and his armies. So they had either a choice to stand, fight, and die, or go back and be slaves again. God led them from Egypt. He saved them. Did he fail? Did he miss something in his planning? Let's see. Go down to verse 21. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. So God made a door where there was none. He provided a way to bring his people out of misery. But the Pharaoh still wants to go after them, and he follows them down that path. Once the children of Israel are clear, what does God do? Let's come down to verse 27. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its strength when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. So God had finally delivered his people. He saved them and defeated the Egyptians. Now they are headed toward the promised land. They're headed back to Canaan. Let's head back, now that we have seen all that we have seen today, and recap on the mission that we've witnessed. Let's return to the HQ. From what we saw today, who was the main person we followed? That was Moses. And where were we? Where did all this take place? In Egypt. And what would you say happened today? We could say the 10 plagues. We could say the Red Sea crossing. Something that encompasses both would be God saves his people. God saves Israel. Something to that effect, to summarize our mission. You've done good work today, agents. Mark the gray box for a mission accomplished. And until next time, farewell.